Borchot habaot, ladies, and thank you so much for joining us just a few weeks before Pesach. And I also want to thank the viewers that log on, whether it's to ohelsarah.com or Torah Anytime. Thank you so much for tuning in, for enhancing your life with Torah, with the ruchaniyut, spirituality, the learning of Torah. We really enjoy your presence, and we feel your presence. We know that you're there, besides the wonderful feedback that you provide for us week after week, and your comments and your suggestions. We really do thank you. Personally, I would like to thank all of those viewers that have Baruch Hashem and generously, with such a full heart, donated to the Purim Seudah in Israel. I'm going to show you now just a few seconds of where your money was spent. You're going to see the tent set up. You're going to see the tables that were set up, food that was served, people that attended. I want to thank you so much for your generous donations, for your amazing generosity. Be'ezat Hashem, you should be zocheh to nisim v'niflaot, and Hashem should open His hand to you. Poteach et yadecha u'mazbi'a lechol chai ratzon. I know, ladies, that as soon as Purim is over, the women begin their mad rush to clean and prepare for the next Chag. And yet, I have to extend this tremendous Yishar Koach to all of you, including the viewers, that you find the time to devote yourselves to the spiritual preparation of the Chag. You should know that you women are the pillars of the Shiur in our nation. Your dedication to Torah is noted and it's appreciated. So this week, I wanted to discuss a topic that will help us move forward into this Chag of Pesach and into a new era of redemption. Chag Pesach holds the secret of redemption, and all of us, unfortunately, are stuck in this universal and personal galut. We got to find a way out. So I hope that this lesson today will help us a little bit, Be'ezat Hashem. Now, I have to ask, did you ever see someone doing something that you knew was a mistake? Did you ever see your friend and know that she was about to do something that isn't the brightest thing for her to do or to say? You watch as that person says or does something that you know doesn't make sense, and you know they're about to make a huge error, a huge mistake. The question is, why do these people make the same mistakes again and again? Why do people continuously repeat yesterday's mistakes tomorrow? Why does the mother who treats her child badly, lo alenu, today, knowing she's wrong, repeat that terrible abuse tomorrow? Why does that husband mistreat his wife today when he knows he made a terrible mistake, but then tomorrow he repeats the abusive pattern? Why does that friend who you told 1,000,000 times not to send you inappropriate clips keep sending them to you again and again? Why are these people making these mistakes over and over? I think the answer could be drawn from a very powerful and famous Mishnah of Pirkei Avot. It's found in the first Perek, Mishnah Vav. Usually, we begin to study Pirkei Avot after Chag Pesach. Today, I am preempting this minhag and beginning before Pesach so that you could have a head start. The Mishnah says, Yehoshua ben Perachi alav shalom said something that many of you already may have heard of, but I hope that after today's shiur you'll have a greater appreciation for it. He says, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Ukne lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend. Vehevedan et kol ha'adam lekav zechut, and judge every person favorably. Question is, why is it that the Mishnah talks about a rabbi, and when it does, it uses the word aseh. Aseh lecha rav. Make for yourself a rabbi. But when it discusses a friend, the word that is used is ukneh. Ukneh lecha chaver. Acquire for yourself a friend. Why do we have to make a rabbi for ourselves, but acquire a friend? Why use two different terminologies? That's number one. Number two, secondly, when you look at the flow of the Mishnah, the ending doesn't really seem to fit in. The Mishnah asks us to make a rabbi for ourselves and to acquire a friend. Now that makes sense because we all need spiritual guidance, and we could all use a good friend for spiritual and moral support. But then the Mishnah says that we should judge every person favorably. Now, how does judging people favorably fit in with this Mishnah exactly? So, in order to answer this question, we have to ask another important question. And the question is, what holds people back from greatness? There are very few great people out there in the world. So what's preventing the majority of people from achieving that same greatness? Well, it could be that what's getting in the way of your greatness is your own personal bias. It's the biased opinions that tell you who you are, the biased outlook that makes you see things your way and makes you think your way. And I want to make this point by showing you a drawing. You see this? It looks, this drawing looks like a woman in her 20s. Now, I want to show you a picture of another lady. You see the picture of this old woman? What's fascinating about this artwork? It's the same picture and the same person. What happened? When you first see the young lady, you're looking at one part of the picture. But when you notice the old lady, you see another part of the drawing. You know what this drawing teaches you? It teaches you that life isn't always what you think it is, but rather how you view it. And at the end of the day, you see what you want to see. We're all that way. We all see what we want to see. And what that means is that after many years of doing something and seeing something in a certain way, we become accustomed to our view of life, and that's the view that we think is the correct one. We're accustoming ourselves to seeing things and doing things the way we were used to from when we were little. I'll give you an example to clarify this point. The most controversial and talked about story in Sefer Shmuel is the story of David alav shalom and Batsheva alav shalom. David HaMelech was the king of the Jewish people who was undisputedly a great man. One day, and I'm telling this to you in short, but one day he looked out his window and he saw a beautiful woman named Batsheva on the rooftop of a nearby building. He was immediately captivated by her beauty and he decided he wanted to marry her. He arranged for her to be brought to the palace and he was intimate with her. The problem was that Batsheva was a married woman. She was married to a man named Uriah Hachiti. When David HaMelech found out about it, he ordered Uriah to be sent out to the front lines of an ongoing battle. And while Uriah was fighting, he was killed in combat. And now that he was officially dead, David was able to keep Batsheva as a wife for himself. That is the story in a nutshell, without going into any specific details, any extra details. Now you tell me, does this sound just to you? Does this sound right? Now, before we judge David HaMelech, you should know that there are a number of Mefarshim who explain the reasons behind David's actions. Some Chachamim say, for example, that when Bathsheba was intimate with David, she had already had a get, a formal get from her husband. You see, all the soldiers who went out to war, they were commanded to give their wives a temporary divorce in the event that they're killed in battle and their bodies are not recovered. And in that way, the woman doesn't have to become an aguna forever, and she could be free to marry whoever she wishes. So Uriah HaChiti was a general in David HaMelech's army, and Mefarshim tell us that before he went out to war, he gave Bathsheba a get. Other Mefarshim say that Uriah HaChiti actually deserved to die in battle because he rebelled and he did things that were deserving of death. So the explanation behind this very controversial story is not the point, because that is not just one shiur in itself, that's a whole year of shiurim in itself, just on trying to understand the story of David and Bathsheba. But from our vantage point, how do we see this story? David saw this woman who was technically an unmarried woman. He brought her to the palace, was intimate with her, and then he had her husband killed. That's how we see it. Now, Natan HaNavi alav shalom, the famous prophet, came to David and he told him a story. He said, Kvod HaMelech, there was once a very wealthy man who had a variety of cattle and sheep and a multitude of chickens. He possessed a tremendous amount of wealth. This wealthy man had a very poor neighbor who owned just one little sheep. The wealthy man loved his little sheep because he had nothing else. He'd keep that sheep at his side. He slept next to it. He took care of it. But then one day, the wealthy man received unexpected guests that he needed to feed. So you know what the wealthy man did? Instead of taking one of his own sheep or chickens for the meal, he went next door to his poor neighbor's house and he slaughtered that one sheep that he had and he served it to his guests. You tell me, David, what do you think about that wealthy man? What do you think should be done with that wealthy man? David HaMelech was so upset with this story. He was beside himself. He said, what a horrible story this is. How could that wealthy man have done such a thing? He had all this cattle, all this food, and he went ahead and he took the poor man's one sheep. That wealthy man deserves to be punished fourfold, 4 times over. He should have to pay back much more. You know what? He even deserves to die for such a cruel act. At this point, Natan HaNavi said what might very well be the most 2 powerful words in the entire Navi, ladies. He turned to David and he said, Ata ha'ish, you are this wealthy man in this story. You're that man. You're the man who was the king. A wealthy man, a king, had wives who had wives, wealth, and everything a man could hope for. But Uriah wasn't in the same position of power as you were. He didn't have the wealth that you do. He had only one wife. And you went ahead and took his only one. His one wife is all he had. And you took away his only sheep. Ladies, David HaMelech could easily see the expansive view of the story as long as it was someone else making the mistake. When a story is told to him about some wealthy man who had a lot of cattle, he could be objective and he could see the story from a realistic vantage point. But he could not see it when he was going through the story himself. He couldn't understand what he was doing as things were happening to him subjectively. Many people are this way. We see what we want to see. If we're used to seeing that young woman in the picture, then that's all we're going to see. And if we're used to seeing the old lady in the picture, we will always see the unpleasant features of the old woman. That's what we do. You know what that means? It means that any opportunity for greatness that might come looking for us, we don't realize or know is really there. Because so many of us are locked into our own bias, and we see only ourselves, and that's why we don't succeed. When that happens to you, you need to give yourself a chance to step outside of yourself, to look at yourself from the outside in and say, 1 second here, maybe I'm that man. Maybe I'm that ish. If you'd look at somebody else doing what you were doing, you'd have a lot to say, right? But because we can't always see ourselves outside of ourselves, and we're so biased, and we're so used to the way we see things and do things, that's why we repeat the same mistakes again and again. Now, we've all experienced this idea. You see someone saying or doing something, and you think, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe she did that. 2 days later, you do it. You sit at a Shabbat table with a relative, for example, and you see them being klutzy, and you say, "Oh, why doesn't he pay attention? He's such a klutz. Look what he did. He spilled his glass of wine over my white tablecloth. What a klutz." What happens in that same meal? You hit your glass and you spill the wine. I have a question. Do you think about yourself when you spilled that glass of wine over your white tablecloth? Do you think about yourself the same way you thought about that person? You think of yourself, "I am such a klutz"? No. You forgive yourself immediately and you pretend it didn't even happen. So often, when we look at someone else, it becomes very easy to judge. But when we look at ourselves, we have a very hard time with it. Now, David HaMelech Alav Shalom was without a doubt one of the greatest men to ever live. When he looked at the story from the outside, he was very easily able to comment. But when he looks at the story from the inside out, he has a very hard time seeing his own mistake. He doesn't see the mistake until Natan Hanavi points a finger at him and says, "Ata ha'ish," you are the man that you just judged in that story. So ladies, how could you achieve greatness? How does a person get out of his own bias? How can you release yourself from your own biased thoughts and actions? How do you get out of your own way? How does a person get out of that rut of repeating mistakes again and again? The answer is through other people. I'll explain first, and then I'm going to give you a few helpful tips. There was a rabbi who 15 years ago began to give speeches. During that time that he started to give speeches, the rabbi's father became the rav of a shul in some community. Now, because there was a little bit of politics at a nearby shul, many of the congregants didn't want to be involved in the politics there, so they decided to daven in that smaller shul where that rav became a rav there. So the father, the rabbi of that small shul, asked his son if he would please give a shiur on Shabbat for all those additional people that were now joining their minyan. And at first, the son, who became an ordained rabbi, was a little shy and apprehensive, but he wanted to help his father, and so he was obliging, and eventually the shiurim became so popular that the shul was full of people. Anyway, one Motzei Shabbat, after the young rabbi gave his usual lecture, an older man who was considered a community leader, not a rabbi, just a community leader, he sat down next to this young rabbi and he began to tear into his speech. He tore that speech apart. He said, "Rabbi, I got to be honest with you, you didn't know what you were doing. When you spoke, you sounded so sarcastic. You thought you were being funny with your jokes, but nobody thought you were funny. People were b'chlal trying to figure out what you were saying. Well, what were you saying, b'chlal, about the old days and old days? Who cares about the old days? You should know that people didn't walk out of your speech just not to hurt your feelings. Ladies, for 10 minutes straight, this respected man in the community was telling off this young rabbi who had just begun to give shiurim the year before as a favor to his father. And this man sat there through the entire Havdalah while people were leaving the shul, and even after they left, and he sat there berating the young rabbi about his latest shiur. You could imagine the poor young rabbi was shaken up for the next 3 days. He felt like he just wanted to cry because there were so many people who came to hear his shiur, and the shiurim became so popular, and here this guy was pretty much telling him that he was making a complete fool of himself. So it was very hard for this young rabbi. He felt so hurt that he didn't want to have anything to do with that man. Believe it or not, the rabbi, the young rabbi, eventually accepted it as a powerful lesson. Because at the end of the day, when he thought about it, there were some comments made by the older man that were true, and the rabbi used those points to become an even better lecturer. What that young rabbi learned is that the way to get out of your own bias is through other people. So here are some tips that can help you. First of all, number one, teachers. Teachers doesn't mean that we go to school, sit in a class, and we have a teacher. Teacher means that if you're about to do something, you should seek out somebody's advice. There are many people out there who aren't teaching in a classroom, but they have lessons of life that they can share with you, that they can help you with. If you're starting a business, reach out to somebody who already has the same experience in that field and ask them what to do and how to go about it. If you're about to get married, seek out the proper people that could give you advice on marriage and relationships. And this tip, by the way, I say to the young adults who are in the dating world, I'm telling you, don't make the mistake of thinking that because you grew up in your parents' house and you watched them a little as you grew up, that means that you are now an expert in marriage. Don't think you have it all under control. You know why? Because you've never done this before. You don't know what it means to be married until you're actually married and living the life that your parents lived. Plus, you don't know what kind of problems your parents kept from you that they didn't share. So you see a perfect marriage, but not necessarily did your parents have a perfect marriage. So it would be advisable for you to go out and seek the proper advice. You could even learn, by the way, from people who are divorced. There's always something that a divorced person can share with you, either about the mistakes that they made and even the things that they did do right, and for some reason it just didn't work out. So seeking real advice means that you ask the people who have life experience, not your peers or your siblings who haven't experienced the life nisyonot that older people have. How do you ask your 21-year-old sister who just got married 6 months ago about life and marriage? Exactly what kind of advice could she offer you? How do you ask your 23-year-old brother about halakha when he hasn't even begun to scratch the surface of the depths of Torah and he could make a terrible mistake? In other words, whatever area of life you stumble across that requires counsel, seek the right advice and don't be afraid to ask and to be told. This tip can be very helpful to you, and yet so few people do it. And I realize, maybe because it affects a person's pride. And that's why the Mishnah says, Aseh lecha rav. You have to go out and make it happen. Aseh. The Mishnah is telling us to do it, to make it happen, and seek real advice from the people who could truly help you, from those people who are your teachers. They're like a rabbi, because there's so much wisdom out there And so few people actually tap into that wisdom. And by the way, this happens a lot in this generation with the young adults who think that they're smarter and more experienced than the ones who are older than them, more experienced than their own parents. They think they have life all mapped out, and they know precisely the direction that they're going to take, that's going to lead them to the land of success. Meanwhile, you know where they end up? They end up in Candyland, making terrible mistakes. Now, I do understand that at times a person may feel that seeking the right advice is too humbling, or maybe they think they appear weak and incapable. So let me tell you what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did when he created mankind. The Pasuk in Bereshit does not say, I will create man. That's not what it says. The Pasuk says, Na'aseh Adam. Let us make man. Rashi HaKadosh Alav Shalom asks, and he comments, well, who's us? The only one who created man was the Ribono Shel Olam. So Rashi says that no, actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu approached the Malachim and he sought out their advice. What do you mean? You're asking advice from the Malachim? You're the Almighty. You created these angels and you need to ask them for advice? No, ladies. Hashem doesn't need anybody's advice. Rather, the Master of the universe was teaching us a lesson in humility. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching us that as human beings, we won't know everything about everything. That's just impossible. So if you want to branch out of your personal bias, you're going to have to go out and seek advice. Now there are times where we look around and we see someone who's very successful. How do we react to that person's success? Many people could feel a pang of jealousy. And some people, depending on how noble they are, they might think, you know what? I'm so happy for them. I'm glad that they have success. But in all honesty, their success has nothing to do with me. And they move on. But if you're smart, you'll learn from that person's success. When you see someone succeeding, whether it's in the area of Gashmiyut or Ruchaniyut, when you see someone thriving and growing in their personal or religious matters, you have to inquire as to how they reached that state of success. You could learn so much, not only by asking, but by being a good observer. And after you observe and you make your mental notes, learn from it, because nothing in life comes from nothing. Everything that we are and everything that we achieve is because of hard work, perseverance, determination, and emunah, and in the neshama that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. You know, in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, there's a chinuch statement, piece of advice, that might just be one of the strangest statements you'll ever hear. It's a statement that if you'd ask any teacher or parenting expert or rabbi, none of them would offer you this advice, but it's written in the Haggadah black on white. In the Haggadah, there is a piece of parenting advice that you come across every single year. And when you read it, you think to yourself, it can't be that the author of the Haggadah wrote this piece of advice over here. It just can't be. The Haggadah says that one of the 4 sons who attends the Seder night is the Rasha. When you have this evil son who's speaking in a rebellious and condescending way, what does the Haggadah tell you to do? The Haggadah says, Af ata emor lo, you should also say to him, meaning how do you respond to his condescending ways? Hak'et shinav, you knock out his teeth. You knock out his teeth. What a piece of advice this is. I mean, tell me any parent, any teacher or rabbi that would tell you that if your son's not behaving, just knock out his teeth. Would anybody ever say that? That's good advice? So what's the Haggadah teaching us over here? The Haggadah is referring to a pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyah Hanavi that says, Avot achlu boser. Fathers have eaten unripe grapes. When a parent eats something that is not good, like an unripe grape, but they eat it even though it is not healthy for them, what is the end of that pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyah? Veshinei vanim tikena. Then the teeth of the children shall be set on edge, meaning the child's teeth are going to fall out. That means that if a parent makes mistakes, the child will usually be the product of that mistake. Avot achlu boser. If the parent is eating the wrong foods, veshinei vanim tikena. The result is that the child's teeth are going to fall out. So do you know what the Haggadah is teaching the parents? The author of the Haggadah is saying, Af ata. You are also the reason why your child's teeth are falling out, so to speak. You're part of the reason why he looks the way he does and behaves the way he does. Af ata. You're also the reason. You tell that to the average parent and he'll say, oh, I can't handle that, it's not true, I did my very best. But you know what? The Chachamim are telling us that the challenging children are like the Nevi'im coming to the parents to tell them, Ata ha'ish, you're the one who's making the mistake. You're the one who made the mistake. So when parents wonder, why is my child that way? You know what? It must be because of the friends that he hangs around with. It must be the teachers are not influencing him the proper way. Oh, maybe it's the internet. It's the smartphone that's killing my kid. Now, while all those things are really true, they really are. In addition to the dilemmas that we're facing in this generation as parents, you have to remember that your child is a product of what you ate, so to speak. Your child is a product of some of the mistakes that you made. And sometimes when you're making those mistakes, you're blinded, you're biased. Because some of us will only see the young woman in that drawing and not the old woman. We don't see any mistakes. We don't see anything going wrong. And we don't see it because of what our eyes are accustomed to see. Because of our own views, our biased views and thoughts, we end up making the same mistakes again and again. And then what happens? HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends us a reminder that perhaps you needed some work to be done and it wasn't done. It wasn't done right. And then you see a kid who's not what you wanted him to be, and then you wonder, how did this happen? And often the answer is going to be, Af ata. The reason might very well be you. And maybe this is what the Mishnah implies when it says, Aseh lecha rav. In other words, Aseh. Make everything that's happening around you, make all those things your teachers of life. Make another parent's success with his children your rabbi, your rav, your teacher. Aseh lecha rav. Make your friend's good marriage your rav, your teacher. Make your neighbor's successful business your teacher. Make another person's good midot your rav, your teacher. Don't be indifferent or jealous or misguided by your own ego. You should learn how to learn. When you see success, make it your teacher. Now some people might hear this and they say, oh, so basically what you're telling me is to look around and notice how bad I am. No, I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm asking you to look around and not be afraid to admit how much better you could be. It doesn't mean you're unsuccessful. It means that we could all improve. You have to believe that you're a great person who has the ability to even be better than you were the day before. There's nothing wrong with looking around for clues for what better means and what better is. Because there are all kinds of teachers of life out there that are waiting to teach you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is leaving you all kinds of clues in your life that you're meant to retrieve, to read, and figure out. So instead of ignoring the clues, we could turn them into life lessons. That's tip number 1. The second tip that can help you get out of your biased ways is a good friend. When you have a good friend who gives you positive criticism, you might not like it, but that friend will say to you, I'm only telling this to you because I'm your friend. We have many friends out there who are very nice to us, and they even pat us on the back for things that we did that we didn't deserve a pat on the back for. But real friends, honest friends, will point out that young woman that you're constantly seeing in the picture as the old woman. If you have good friends, true friends, friends that are there for you forever, friends that know that even if you're a little upset, you're not going to lose the relationship. If you have real friends, they're going to tell you the difference between reality and falsehood. True friends tell it to you like it is, and they'll be real with you. A good friend is going to point out what it is that you're failing at, and he's also going to tell you when you've done well. You don't need the kind of friends who are always agreeing with you, even when they see that you're about to fall into a pit. You need a friend who's going to point to that pothole on the street that you're about to chas v'shalom fall into. Because for some reason, your biased self doesn't see what you're about to walk into. A good friend points out the light at the end of the tunnel when you refuse to see that light. And even more than that, that good friend is willing to walk through the tunnel with you just to show you the light. That's why the Mishnah says, Ukne lecha chaver. You have to own that friend. You have to acquire that friend. It has to be the kind of friendship that's in the realm of ownership, of acquiring, because an ownership is enduring. It's forever. If you buy something or you acquire something, hopefully it's yours forever. So if it's a friendship that's like an ownership, where you have a relationship that is real, safe, and it's strong, then you have a friend who could provide you with one of the best gifts in the world. And that gift is called honesty. They could look at that picture that you're looking at with biased eyes. You're looking at it with biased eyes, and they see it through the eyes of objectivity and realism. Remember that if you're not willing to hear the truth from other people, you'll always stay stuck in whatever direction of life that you're heading in. So if the direction is down, you're heading downwards, you're just going to keep declining. But if you want to go up, 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 you need people out there who could tell you the truth, look at you and say, Ata ha'ish. And you need to look for those kinds of friendships. You need to have that kind of a relationship with your siblings. You need to have that kind of open relationship in your marriages. It's always healthier to see the world through another person's perspective, because that's one of the ways that we can grow. And that's the kind of relationship that a parent should have with his child, and vice versa. If your child cannot be honest with you, and you cannot be honest with your child because both of you are afraid, something is very wrong with that relationship. If you're afraid of your child's reaction when you're going to want to be honest with them, something is terribly wrong with that relationship. You don't have a good relationship with that child if you're afraid, what if I tell them this? Then they'll react like this. That's not a good relationship. That's not a real relationship. Something is very faulty. That's tip number 2. The last tip that can help us grow and be open to hearing the advice of other people is don't shoot the messenger. Sometimes when someone wants to give us positive criticism, we automatically assume that the person doesn't understand us, that he's looking for a way to put us down. we're always coming up with the strangest excuses like, she's probably jealous of me and that's why she's criticizing me. She must be upset about her own life, so she's transferring it onto me. She probably has some hidden agenda. She doesn't understand me. Ladies, don't shoot the messenger. Even if that person has an agenda, even if he's jealous or trying to put you down, hidden in that person's criticism is a message that you could grow from. That's why the end of that Mishnah says, Havedan et kol ha'adam lekaf zechut. You know what that means? It means give that person who's speaking to you the benefit of the doubt. Don't kill the messenger. Listen closely to what they're saying and see if there's anything at all that you could learn from and grow from. So actually, it turns out that the Mishnah is perfect and nothing is out of place that doesn't belong. Rabbi Yoshua is telling us to go out and seek good counsel. Aseh lecharav. Make sure it happens. Aseh. Then he tells us, Ukne lecha chaver. You have to have friends that are so good that you know the relationship is enduring enough and strong enough to be able to handle the truth. Acquire that friendship. It has to be like an ownership. And then the Mishnah ends with the words, Vehevedan et kol ha'adam lekaf zechut. Judge all those teachers of life, all those good friends, favorably when they're being open and honest with you. Don't judge them, because when you do, you end up ignoring them and then you miss a great opportunity for growth and improvement. Focus on the message that's being sent to you, brought to you. This Mishnah, ladies, is very powerful and it's so true. It's telling you how to be the person you need to be. It's telling you how to remove yourself from the biased world that you've created for yourself. It's teaching you how to be able to see real greatness and achieve it. And maybe, just maybe, the Mishnah is also telling us one more thing. When the Mishnah is telling us to judge people favorably, maybe it's trying to teach us that if you're going to take this shiur seriously, and I hope that you do, you might just start to be very critical of yourself. And what happens when you start being critical of yourself? You might turn that criticism in the direction of other people. Meaning, because you're upset with yourself, you begin to be upset with everybody else. The Mishnah therefore concludes by telling us that if you want to be tough on yourself, it's okay, you could be tough on yourself. But Havedan et kol ha'adam lekaf zechut. Don't be tough on other people just because you decided to be tough on yourself. Judge others favorably. I want to tell you, ladies, that what makes a truly a wealthy person is a person who is in possession of one very important thing in life. And that one thing is emet, truth. If you have people in your life, whether it's a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a good friend, anybody who's honest with you for your sake, if you have people in your life who are not afraid to make you aware of the truth for personal growth, if you have people in your life who encourage you honestly and sincerely, and then they applaud your success genuinely, there's nothing that could compete with that truth. Nothing. Truth is one of the greatest things that a person could receive in this world, and it is the seal of the Ribono Shel Olam. When you surround yourselves with people who think you could be better, who think you could be stronger, who see your potential, when you have people in your life who are good teachers and they're good friends, guess what happens? You become better. You become stronger and you become greater. So even if you made a mistake today, there's very little chance that you're going to repeat that mistake tomorrow, because you have an honest support system that's going to help you and guide you correctly. Yeh Ratzon that we should take the lessons of the Mishnah that we learned today. We should rise in our spirituality, and rising means that we shun the bias that we created in our lives. May it be Yeh Ratzon that we see life objectively, that we make it happen, Aseh Lecharav, that everything out there that we encounter becomes our teacher of life. Yeh Ratzon that we should continue to acquire good friends, good people out there in the world who are willing to be truthful with us. And Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, you should be able to see with clarity the emet in your life, in the Seviva around you, and Be'ezrat Hashem, with that emet, be zeicha to see the truth unfolding in your life with Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amen ken, Yeh Ratzon.